evening, everyone. 3rd of February, 2022. Welcome. I need to read this here to begin the meeting. I, Mike Vella, Chair of the Historic Landmark Commission, hereby determine that with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic conditions existing in Salt Lake County, including but not limited to the elevated number of cases, that meetings at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who would be present. All right, following in order. Bear with me just a second here. Very good. I think first order of business then, we just finished our training. Let's have the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on the 6th of January, 2022. Commissioners, are there any comments or discussions regarding the draft minutes that were sent previously?
Oh.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
Thank you, Kenton. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's see. Then the next would be a report from the chair. I do not have a report this evening, and I believe there's no report from the vice chair, as Bab Saleh has been excused from this evening's meeting.
Hey, Mike, do you want to have a vote on the minutes?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, pardon me. I heard a first and a second. Let's vote now. Let me go to my list here. Let me go in order. Carlton Getz.
Aye.
David Richardson.
He's no longer on the commission.
Oh, excuse me. Kenton Peters.
Aye.
Michael Abramson. Robert Hyde.
Aye.
And I believe I've covered everyone that is on the commission now. Very well. All right, motion passes, or excuse me, the meetings have been so approved. Next, let's move to the report from the director.
I do not have anything to report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, very well. Thank you very much, Michaela. Let's next then move to public comments. And the commission will hear public comments not pertaining to items listed on the agenda. And so let's formally open public comments this evening.
I believe Cindy Cromer wanted to make a comment, Michaela.
Very good.
Yes, I am. I do not see hands up, though. I mean, I know Cindy will probably make a comment. Did she email that in, or does she have?
Yeah, her
You see a
hand is
hand up?
actually, yeah, her hand is actually flashing. It's really dark.
Okay,
And she sent an email, so you can unmute her.
there you go. There you go, Cindy. Hi, Cindy. You're unmuted.
Hi. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share some good news. I frequently complain about things, so when there's good news to share, I really want to say something nice. The Central City Historic District has been chosen as the location of the historic home tour sponsored by Preservation Utah. The date is May the 21st, and just to give you a sneak peek, one of the former landmarks commissioners has agreed to have a property on the tour. So save the date. It's a Saturday, and hopefully we won't be wearing masks and all of that kind of stuff, but Preservation Utah pulled off a tour last fall, and it did not become a super spreader event, so I think we could do it again. And then the other thing is that I want to share with you that there has been a wonderful project submitted at the intersection of 5th East and 5th South in the Historic District. It's across from the University of Utah Credit Union. It's a house store. I don't know whether it will come to you, but if it doesn't come to the commission, I'll probably have to submit the images of it because it is so great. It will improve the streetscape. It will be a vibrant place for people to go and walk to, and it's just nothing but enhancement of that corner. And the enthusiasm is already spreading in the neighborhood. I think it's been assigned to a planner. It's identified as a minor alteration. I don't know whether you'll see it, but it's way cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. What was the date for Preservation Utah? That Saturday that you said there was a tour? Has that been set yet?
It's yes, it's Saturday, May the 21st, and it's in the Central City neighborhood. I don't know that every property will be in the district, which extends from 5th East to 7th East and South Temple to the Liberty Park standalone historic district.
Very good. Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments?
I don't see any, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you. Then let's close for the public comments and commence to public hearings. I believe we have 3 public hearings this evening on the Marmalade Condos, minor alteration at Almond Street, and an addition at approximately 563 East, 800 South. So first, let's hear from staff concerning the Marmalade Condos.
Great, thank you, Chair. And is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So Salt Lake City has received a request for a new construction with a representative from MJSA Architects, who's representing the property owner. The new construction request would allow for 12 additional dwelling units on the site within 3 new structures. The new construction request also includes modifications to the underlying RMF 35 zoning district. And that modification includes a reduction in lot width and a reduction in the side and rear yard setbacks. The subject site is located on 2 existing parcels at 226 and 230 West, 300 North, and is within the Capitol Hill Local Historic District. During staff's review, it was found that the proposed Marmalade Condos new construction or requested modification does meet the applicable standards of approval in design guidelines and is therefore recommending that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the request. One moment, excuse me. Sorry about that. The permitted number of units on the site is 16 residential units in the RMF 35 district. The historic structure on the site currently houses 4 residential units. The proposed Marmalade Condo project will provide an additional 12 units within the townhouse and duplex housing type structures. During staff's review, it was found that the Marmalade project is well within the underlying zoning district standards in regard to building height, where the maximum allowed is 35 feet. The proposal will have a building height of no more than 29 feet 10 inches, and building coverage, the allowed is 60% of the site. The proposed building coverage is 37% of the lot. The Marmalade Condos project also meets the historic preservation overlay standards for new construction and multifamily design guidelines. The townhouse structure is proposed to be an 8-plex row house type of housing structure that is proposed to be 3 stories tall. The first floor of the townhouse structure will have a 2-car garage that faces the access drive to the east and includes an awning patio that faces the west. A single-car garage will allow for like a studio type of area that faces the west, which fronts along a commercial parking area. The second and third floors will have balconies that project 4 feet from the east and west facades. The second floor will include mostly casement windows. The third floor will have both casement and double hung windows. The windows will have a vertical orientation that's similar to the contributing structure on the site. All 4 facades of the row house structure will include brick detailing as the exterior material. The third floor will have aluminum paneling within the balcony areas, and the balcony structure will be powder-coated steel tubing. The north and south facing facades will be the same with pop-out projections with aluminum paneling material. The north and south facades will also both have casement and double hung windows with vertical orientation. The two duplex structures will have the same exterior elements. Similar to the townhouse structure, brick detailing will cover all 4 facades. A 2-car garage will face the access drive, and casement and double hung windows will be included on the ground floor. The second and third floors will have windows similar to the townhouse structure, and will also have balconies that project 4 feet from the facades of the building. The building elements on the 3 new structures will be similar to the contributing 4-plex on the site. Brick detailing and stone built courses that are present on the 1910 neoclassical Victorian style structure, and the vertical oriented double hung windows on the side facades of the historic building are similar to the proposed multifamily structures. The 2 contributing structures on 226 and 230 West, 300 North will remain. The new structures will have minimal impact on the historic character of 300 North as they're set back from 300 North. Access to the site will also remain approximately the same. And regarding the site, the regrading of the site will overall be very minimal. Interior development of the block is also typical in the Capitol Hill area, with a number of interior developments in the vicinity, including Ardmore Place to the north of the site. The 3 modifications that are requested by the applicant through the new construction review is first the request for a reduction in lot width. The RMF 35 district allows for additional residential units on the site based on the size of the lot. In order to preserve the 2 contributing structures that face 300 North, this reduction in lot width is necessary. The RMF 35 district requires an 80-foot of frontage on a public street. The Marmalade Condos project is proposing approximately 57 feet. The RMF district also has a 10-foot minimum interior side yard setback as well, and for buildings with entrances that face an interior property line, a 12-foot setback is required. The applicant is requesting a reduction to a 6-foot setback on the townhouse structure, which will front along a commercial parking lot. The facade of the townhouse is located 10 feet from the property line, and the balconies project 4 feet from the structure, which gives us the 6-foot setback. The request also includes a reduction to a 5-foot setback on the 2 duplex structures, which face an alleyway to the east. The final modification to the underlying zoning district that's requested is a reduction in the rear yard setbacks. The RMF 35 district requires a 25% of the lot depth with a maximum of 25 feet rear yard setback. The applicant is proposing a 9-foot rear yard setback for the townhouse structure and a 12-foot setback for the duplex structure. A 4-foot balcony projects into the requested rear yard area. However, balcony projections are permitted to encroach into the rear yard setback up to 5 feet. Overall, staff has found that the requested setback modifications are appropriate as the scale of the proposed residential structures are similar to the historic scale of the area. The new structures are set back from the street and will not alter 300 North's historic character. And the intent of the RMF 35 district is being met, as well as the Historic Preservation Overlay District and multifamily design guidelines. So as I had stated before, staff's recommending that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the new construction request with the accompanying modifications. And I did see the applicants, Ralph Nagasawa and Kin Ing, present, and I believe that they have prepared a presentation. And I'm also able to answer any questions the commission may have.
Very, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Nan. Commissioners, are there any questions for Nan? I
Nan,
had, go ahead.
sorry, I was muted. Sorry there, Mike. Nan, did you say there were some conditions on your approval, or did I mishear that? Or your recommendation?
I'm not, as part of the staff report, I was not recommending any conditions as part of the approval.
Okay, thank
But
you.
staff was recommending approval.
Okay, thanks.
So, Nan, I did have a couple of questions. When you were working with the applicant, I take it that the fire access alley would be approved by fire marshals. It appears that it's at the length that it is, and then there's grass block at the end, so that fire trucks, if they had to work in the alley, they would move to that point and then be able to back up. There's a turnaround that's created there, and then be able to drive out. So that's been reviewed, and that's okay.
As part of the staff review, I did send that to our fire department for their comments, and they did send comments back to me, and they didn't raise any concerns in those comments. And I know that the applicant has been working with the fire department.
Okay, because typically the length was anything over 100 feet. You had to be able to turn around. It was a little bit more than that. So it sounds like the fire department is fine with that. Fair enough.
If you talk to the applicant about, because during the process of working with the applicant, there were changes made to the site plan. So I believe the applicant would have more information on the requirements from the fire department on that.
And then likewise, city trash service removal. I take it that would be taken further down the alley closer to 300, so that the trucks would be able to pick up trash there. Is that your understanding as well?
That's typical. Sending comments to waste management isn't common for staff to do during our reviews. That's from interior block development. That's generally the way that trash pickup is addressed, is you take it to the nearest street.
All right, fair enough. Very good. Commissioners, any other questions for Nan? Hearing none, let's hear from the applicant.
Oh, hi. I am Ken Eng with MJSA Architects. Just want to touch on the last two items that you have mentioned. We work with the fire department. If someone can pull up the image of the site plan, then there's a turnaround for everything's worked out with the fire department. They have no issues with it. There's a turnaround
very good.
fire truck. And because a fire truck can turn around, we also along in there you would see the dumpsters location, and that is also designed such that it is out of the way, and the garbage truck would come in about 50 feet and then pick it up, and then there's enough adequate room for them to make a U-turn in there. Not a U-turn.
No, I appreciate that. I saw the dimension that was on there, and it exceeded 100 feet. In years past, they would not allow that, but it sounds like they have approved that, and so the truck can then back up, up more than 100 feet, exit, drive out again. That's all. I just didn't want you to get caught with that particular requirement and then have to do something different. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Nagasawa, you do have presenting abilities and are able to share your own slide if you would like to.
Okay. I don't have it up though. I don't have it queued up.
Oh, we didn't realize that. but-
Okay, that's fine.
Any other,
But yeah, let's just introduce ourselves. This is Kenny. He's the design principal in charge on the project. I'm Ralph Monticello, the principal in charge on the project. Jackson Jones, he's a developer on the project. We've been working closely with the city for the last 4 years on this job, and with the planning department specifically within this last 2 years, going back and forth, getting to get to this point. So we've had many iterations on our submittals for the application. We've worked closely with fire, knowing fire is definitely a key element to design any multi-use buildings, or well, almost any buildings or anything. So we've headed into this whole project working closely with, it was Ted Itch on at the time, now Doug Banks. And now, and also, considering parking. So, parking and fire is always the big thing. And we felt, well, we've definitely taken care of that. And our big point is it's an infill project to the city, providing housing, that desperately that city needs, the housing. We've maintained the integrity of the neighborhood we're going to restore the contributing factor, the contributing buildings on Second North there, or Third North. And so, so as the pedestrian walks the sidewalk, there's really no impact because this is all behind the existing houses.
let me add to that. The whole idea is to design a structure that allows the existing structure, the two existing historical structure to stand alone and not connect to it, therefore pushing our design a little further back into the rear yard. So by doing that, we want to maintain the sensitivity in our design to the existing contributing structures. And we are trying to, in our goals, we design a building that is understated and sensitive to the historical nature. And so it is masonry. So we selected materials that would be consistent with the neighborhood. And we did not go in and create a building with a lot of details, but very subtle details in that respect. And we are using, trying to create a sense of depth. That sense of depth is created by the setback of the windows into the opening. We have, as a matter of fact, we have very thick walls. I think our walls is almost 12-inch to maybe 13-inch thick. And so the windows are set back to the inside. And let's see what else. The windows are very historical in nature. The height is, once again, we work with the fire department for the height requirements. And that's about it. Probably easy for you guys if you have any question that you can ask us.
Yeah, can I have a question, Mike?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, hi, Ken.
Kenton?
Overall, very handsome building, seems quite appropriate. Tell me a little bit though about, it seems like to the east, you're backing onto single family dwellings. Talk about your relationship with those, because you're could be a rather imposing structure in a residential backyard.
There's an alley right there. So the separation, and as you know, in most of these buildings, when you're face to face to each other, you're 25 feet apart. A lot of building, I guess, is happening in Salt Lake City, where you can have two rows of building that are 25 feet apart. But we are actually much further than that. You're counting our setback, counting the 15-foot alleyway, counting their rear yard, you're at least 30, 40, 50 feet away from those, the facade of those, the rear facade of those buildings. And as a matter of fact, I was inside which is the building next to yours, 333 North. I was inside that building. I was inside looking up from the top down, looking at everything. I really do not. I do not see a kind of a detrimental impact because they're quite far enough away. As a matter of fact, I was, from there, you kind of look at, you literally, from that vantage point, you see more of the neighbor's yard. I mean, and the side yard is literally 3 feet apart from, buildings are 3 feet, 4 feet apart from each other. So you're looking into the neighbor's bedroom and whatnot from there. So I think their impact is more from their adjacent neighbors than from us.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I have a clarifying question.
Very good.
In the site plan, there's quite a bit of space in between the new construction and the existing structures. And there seems to be, in addition to parking, something else that's not labeled on the site plan. Could you take us through what that space is?
These the amenity spaces.
It's just, what it is just green space for the people, for the tenants, I guess. One, I don't know if you're looking at it, it'd be the one to the north of the turnaround. It's just it'd be an arbor, a trellis, an arbor. The mailboxes would be located in that area. So it's sort of the green gathering space. And that was one item that the planning commission asked us to provide more of course, the green space for the people.
And rather than breaking them up, we try to concentrate them in a greater area so people feel more comfortable in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions, commissioners, to the applicant? Hearing none, let's open for public comments. And remember, everyone, this meeting is being recorded, so please state your name before asking questions or commenting.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I have Jonathan Lee. I'm unmuting you, John.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Jonathan Lee, and with me is my wife, Ann. And we're the property owners on 237 West Ardmore Place, which is north of the development. And also, the other neighbor affected is Steve Cardone, but he had a full hip replacement surgery just the other day, so I'm kind of representing him as well. But anyway, so my property backs the yard, which would be directly affected by the boundary variance request. And I'm working off the October 20th notification. And so when Nan was talking about the duplex issue, what my site plan show is a 6-plex, a 3-plex, another 3-plex, but it looks like it has been modified. Whatever, but I went online just right now, so it kind of caught me off guard because I was planning on my comments based on that. So I went online to see what the site plan is, and when I looked at the HLN number for 2020-00803, it says the current project is on hold by the owner. We'll submit all the proper application when we start back up again. Thank you for checking in. And that was dated January 5th or 6th, January 5th. So I going kind of blind on the new site plan other than what I saw earlier in Nan's presentation. But based on the October plan, up north, I assume they are requesting the variance towards the backyard of my property and Steve's property. And we were opposed to that because on the frontage of the project, which is closer to the second north, there's 2-story, more historic looking buildings. But on our street, which is Ardmore Place, 350 North, the area that's directly affected by this area, it's all like single story above ground buildings, with a semi-exposed basement. So the proposed 3-story building height is already so high in comparison to the other building, and that any closer to the boundary of the property line would minimize the green space on the project side. And in essence, our backyard will end up to be their green space. And with a 3-story, 30-foot building, you know, we'll probably never see the light of day. And also based on the October 20th fire lane, so every car that goes into that project, which is, I forget, 12 buildings plus whatever the existing building, their headlight will be directly shining into our backyard and into our back window of our apartment. So yeah, that's kind of a concern to us. And also, yeah, and that driveway also dead ends at the property line between our property and my neighbor's property line. And it would, yeah, send the traffic light. And I don't know what the redesign of that driveway is yet, but right now it's just a little chain link fence. So I'm just thinking for the safety at night for visitors who don't know that driveway is a dead end or a fire lane. And it ends abruptly. It just, you know, if they continue, maybe they'll put up a wall, maybe not. But as it is right now, it just goes straight into our chain link fence in our backyard. And if they are going 30 miles an hour, they'll, you know, go into the building. And then you know, and based on the original, the 3 building, the triplex that was going to be based to the property line and the variance requested, you know, my thinking is like right now at that there's a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 1-bedroom unit. They can probably narrow it to a 3 1-bedroom unit, but it seems like the design has changed. So it just, so we're asking the commission to deny the request on any boundary change on the north side of the property. Let's see if, yeah, and just to, you know, and to just fit the required project within the existing requirement instead of encroaching on the others in the neighborhood, especially where the buildings are just 1-story buildings.
Very well. Thank you, sir. Are there any other public comments?
Mr. Chair, I have some email comments that need to be read into the record.
Very well.
The first one is from Amy Richardson. She says, hello, I would like to comment. I live on the property directly on the east side, 325 north, 200 west of the proposed building. Our historic house was built in 1907 and a most admired property. We have lived here for 23 years and have invested in making our home and yard beautiful haven for us, our children, and neighbors. The newly proposed property would not only infringe on our privacy, but as a multi-unit building would devalue our property. There is no way that they could access the property without putting in a driveway along the back of our property, which would be intrusive to our yard, not to mention noisy. To be honest, it makes no sense to try and squish a huge building, removing beautiful old trees and ruining a historic neighborhood with a building that would fit much better in a newer area and not be so ill-fitting to what is around. Thank you for listening to my concerns, Amy Richardson. I have another email from Owen Richardson. It is kind of long. It says this is in reference to the proposed construction of several townhome structures deep within the block of about 230 West, 300 North. The applicant requests an exception to the lot width standard, a reduction to the side yard setback, and new construction in the Capitol Hill Historic District. I would like to register my opposition to this proposal on the strongest possible terms. As a 22-year resident of one of the neighboring properties on 200 West, you can imagine my dismay at the prospect of having tall structures replacing the greenscape that has been there for a century at least. Though indifferently, I'm sorry, did somebody just say something?
No, go ahead.
Indifferently maintained by the current owner, we have long appreciated the presence of the trees and open space at the back of our property. This unusually long green space strip, a lovely example of the spirit of the character of the historic neighborhood, is therefore at risk, and once lost is unlikely to be retrieved. If bare earth, grass, trees, and fresh air is produces don't qualify as historic and worthy of protection, I don't know what would be. While I understand that the zoning there may allow for multi-family dwellings, I beg you to employ your strictest wisdom and most attentive spirit as you consider this application for new construction within our protected historic neighborhood. Aesthetically, to my taste at least, the renderings I have seen depict an architecture more appropriate to a modern industrial office complex rather than a venerable 130-year-old residential community. Setting questions of architectural taste and preference for the unobtrusive view aside, these petitions belie an indifferent disregard of the standards that protect the historic nature and spirit of the area. By asking to go beyond the set limits, the developer essentially asked to be allowed to cram as many units as possible into limited space already protected by standards. Between this proposal and the owner's previous violations in the neighborhood, it is evidently clear that the owner's only interest in the community is maximum profit rather than the respect for historic neighborhood. As it is your mandate to monitor, protect, and preserve the historic integrity of the Capitol Hill District, while at once encouraging development with prudent wisdom, we implore you to consider this proposal carefully. This is a unique piece of green space property upon which sits a fine example of late 19th, early 20th century suburban home, and it's worth preserving. Please accept my sincere gratitude for your service. Respectfully yours, Owen H. Richardson. I have another email from Joy Millard. She says, I will try to make this short. Developers who want to develop property within historic district should abide by all rules, regulations, etc. that apply to homeowners. This property should have to abide by all legal setbacks. Also, all materials should be in conformance with what the homeowners must abide by. The biggest thing is that they should not be allowed to go beyond all legal setbacks and boundaries. Thank you sincerely, Joe Ellen Millard. She also sends another email that says they were speaking of the alley. There is no alley. The land to the east is privately owned. This is adjacent to my property, and I take great exception to reducing the setback because it is very much adversely affects my property and my use of property. Again, the alley is not theirs. They have not reached out to the homeowners at all. The home at 333 North, 200 West is a relative of the developer. They have torn apart the property and it has sat that way for 2 years now with minimal ongoing work. They are planning on putting another rental unit on the back of their property. There's a huge conflict of interest if they are saying the neighbors are on board because this family owns 2 of the structures and has been using them as B&Bs, which is illegal in the city. And that's the last of them.
Very well. Hearing no other public comments, I will next allow the applicant to answer and respond to any of the public comments.
So regarding the lights from cars driving into the property, the north edge of the property is, there are fencings there and as well as landscaping there. So there's no chance that if you have a 7-8 feet high fence, your car lights is not going to shine that high. Another issue that I've heard when is that there's height with building or designing a building that's very high. The height limitation there is 35 feet. The historical building to the front of it is 29 feet, and we're maintaining a consistency with that by keeping the building at 29 feet. So it's 6 foot above the required height. The alleyway there's a private alleyway. It is not, but it's for I believe 6 homeowners. we're not using that alleyway. That if there's an alleyway, we don't even need that alleyway for fire department access. The fire department has given us approval based on what we have done on site and not based on the alleyway. So the alleyway is just a separation. The homeowners without consensus cannot vacate that alleyway for what it's worth, but it is a space there that's 15 feet wide that before the backyard begins. And so it's a dedicated alleyway for all 6 homeowners. And so anyway, I think those,
From what to what? Yeah, I don't know. The duplex. They have 2 duplexes.
I think I answered most of those questions. And once again, one other thing that the first gentleman, he spoke about the separation on the rear yard. From his house, we are 43 feet away from our structure, from the back wall of his house to our wall, the wall in our structure. On the other structure for the gentleman that's not here, we are 36 feet away. So from our balcony to his structure. So anyway, so that's where those separations are.
Yeah, and it is sort of ironic because if you look on like Second North, 200 North, or 200 West, which is abutting that property, those houses are all within
2 feet, 4 feet
apart.
apart.
So, I mean, it's,
Yes.
that's sort of ironic to say. The other thing about this is an infill project right now. These Salt Lake City blocks are so large. Right now, the infill of this area, it's just, abandoned sheds, there's derelict cars parked in there and things. And, one thing we're trying to do is clean up the area. So we feel it's a benefit to the neighborhood. And as per what Ken said about the height, we are below 30 feet. We're at 29 and some change. There's
How tall are the other houses?
Yeah, there's many other houses around the neighborhood houses and the buildings just adjacent to us to the west. They're over 30 feet tall, 35 feet. In the zone, we are allowed 35 feet, and we are going to the 29-foot height above grade. Yeah, just the adjacent properties in that, they're like 32, 33, even up to 34 feet. So we're doing a flat roof, and so we feel that we comply to the zoning intent is what is where we are.
There was, Mr. Nagasawa, there was one question, though, I think remains unanswered, and that was that the alley, abruptly stops if a car is traveling too fast. You say that there's going to be a fence there and landscaping. Is there
Yes.
something that would preclude that car, continuing into the neighbor's backyard?
We can make sure that the fencing is opaque and solid, and then probably put reflective material on there for safety so that people can see that. So A, lights aren't shining into the neighbor's yard, and B, people can see that fence coming. So.
And
Very
you're
well.
not driving that. I mean, this is a drive.
It's a drive.
So you're not driving 30 miles an hour. You're falling. So, yeah, I mean, plus, we are required to fully landscape the whole site. And we have planned to do that around the whole perimeter and everything with fencing. That is a requirement in the design guidelines.
Very well.
Mike,
Any other
yeah.
discussion?
Yeah,
Yes,
can I
go
ask
ahead.
a question? Gentlemen, I'm having some difficulty with my PDF, and I was trying to look at the zoning. Does the zoning change at the north end of your property to the residential zone?
Yes, yeah, it's surrounded by SR1A zoning. So, and what we have is a very small pocket of RMF 35 zoning right here, which the city is clearly intended to create an infill project, because we are in desperate need of the missing middle housing that we need. This is what that space is for.
Right.
So, but yeah, SR1A.
Okay.
That's right.
You made a reference earlier about going through a lot of iterations on designing this. Clearly you felt like you need to some relief on the setbacks. Could you tell us how that came about, especially to the north?
Yes, part of that requirements is the fire truck turnaround. So the hammerhead turnaround is one of the main element for that. And also it's and having the amenities in front of those structures to allow the amenity plus the fire truck and including that includes the dumpster. So we sort of set the dumpster where it can be, where we can hide it. And then we didn't want to see if having the dumpsters going all the way to the back of the structure, because that, as a matter of fact, thinking that the dumpster might create more problems for the neighbors, because every time when you pick those up, it gets noisy.
Mhm.
And so and these things kind of hangs up 10, 12 feet and then it's noisy and all of that. So those are the reasons that, and the main part of it is the hammerhead has to be where it is, because that's where the fire department, we have worked it out with the fire department. And they're saying that this is where you cannot have your hammerhead any further back than this point. And there's a the turnaround has to meet that requirement, the turning radius. So when we went back, what we tried to do was work with the fire department on hammerhead turnaround. That's what they've told us. This is the location of the hammerhead, and make that building work. And as you can see, if we cannot really push the building forward anymore, meaning to the south, because then we wouldn't have any edges to that building where we can walk around.
Right. Did you ever consider reducing the number of units in that larger building, the longer building?
It's certainly, I mean, our effort with the site is to build as many units as the zoning intends. And the problem is there are so many fixed costs in terms of infrastructure and upgrading the utilities and bringing infrastructure in to that rear portion of the lot, that the project isn't financially viable without those additional units. And so our effort right now is to create quality housing stock that Salt Lake City really needs. And I think that MJSA has done a remarkable job in designing a structure that's incredibly sensitive to the historical structures around it, that harmonizes beautifully with the contributing structures all around it.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Hearing none, I think this is now time to close the public hearing and move to executive session. Nan, can I ask you please to put the site plan back up? I think it was the third or fourth drawing in the set.
Yes, I will share my screen again.
And is it possible, Nan, too, you could just go through why they need like the balcony encroachment modification? Just like re-clarify that.
About the measurements of the modification, is that what you mean, Michaela?
Yes.
Okay. So the modifications that they're requesting, go back to that slide. So in the side yard, I think that a lot of the concern is from the rear yard. The duplex rear yard setback is 12 feet, and this balcony, which in our zoning district, it's permitted to encroach up to 5 feet. The proposed balcony would encroach approximately 4 feet into this rear yard area. But we would be measuring the rear yard area from the rear facade of the building, so it would be 12 feet. And the townhouse structure would be a 9-foot setback from the rear yard. And that that setback does not include this approximate 1-foot projection, which is that aluminum paneling window projection. If you measure the rear facade of the townhouse structure to the rear property line, that would be 10 feet, 10-foot setback. And then the side yard setbacks, the property line to the west, the required, because there's building entrances, is 12 feet, and they're proposing a 6-foot setback. However, that setback, because it's within the interior side yard, we do have to include the balconies when we consider that setback. So those balconies are 4 feet, which means from the side facade of the structure to the west property line would be a 10-foot setback, which if we were measuring from the side facade of the structure would meet the RMF 35 standards. And the duplexes that front the east property line are proposed to have a 5-foot setback, and the required is a 10-foot setback. And Chair, what would you, I forgot the question that you had asked before, if you don't mind reminding me of that question.
Well, my question's been answered. I now that I'm looking at this plan, I understand where the hammerhead is there for the fire trucks to turn around and then be able to drive out of the alley. I understand that. I guess I was curious that the fire department had indicated that the turn or that the hammerhead happened basically mid-block rather than at the end of the alley that was created. Was there any consideration that that circle that's shown there, a little bit darker hash, moved to the end of the alley as opposed to being in the mid-block? Was that ever a part of the discussion? That was what my question was originally, and
Could we address that? Okay, we have the hammerhead location where it's at. There is that, for moving that intersection, I guess we'll call it, all the way to the north property or something, is what you said. There is 150-foot depth the truck can go. So we have to put that intersection at 150 feet. Then they can go to maximum. And then they can go another 150 for the tail end.
very good.
That's where it's set at.
So meaning it cannot be in the back end of it because it
would be 300 feet then. I understand that. That makes sense. Commissioners, any other discussion?
Hey, Mike Kenton here. I've got to tune off for a moment. My daughter just called. She was just in a car accident, so I'll get back on when I can.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, she's okay, but got to deal with it. Sorry.
Thank you.
I believe that, do we have a quorum issue at this point?
Yes, we no longer have a quorum if Kenton walks away.
This should just be a moment. I'll get back as quickly as I can. I apologize to everyone involved.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hope she's okay.
Yeah, everyone's okay, but cops are there and they just need some insurance info.
Okay.
I'll be back as soon as I can. Sorry.
So, Michaela, since we no longer have a quorum, should we just pause for 10 minutes and hope that Kenton returns in that time?
Yes. Yes, sir. So 10 minutes would be 6:40.
Yes.
Hey.
Pardon. We need to take a pause, folks.
to a quorum. You had asked a question, or I think most of the questions have been posed. We're still in an executive session. Commissioners, I've not heard from several of you. Carlton, would you like to comment on this, please?
If Carlton's not back, I can speak for a moment too, if that's okay.
Very well. Michael?
Okay, I guess I wanted to comment on something slightly different than what we've been discussing, which is let's say the setbacks. It seems to me that the staff report is sort of at pains to describe the vertical window proportions as one of the things that contributes to the accordance with the neighborhood's historic character. But in looking at the elevations and the renderings, I guess it seems to me that there is a pretty broad variety of different window proportions, some of which, you know, are very vertical and do seem to me to accord pretty well with the historic character of the neighborhood, and others that are maybe more in line, let's say, with the description given in the public comments of a kind of more industrial feel. In particular, if we could go to do you have any of the renderings from the staff report in this presentation, Nan?
I do. Let me
You
get
do.
that. I'll take 1 minute.
I mean, I'm taking the caution that we had before the meeting to not redesign things pretty seriously at the moment, but I just wanted to mention it, that it seemed like that there was this sort of disconnect between the staff report and those renderings. I think they're 1 page up. Yeah, there. Okay. So specifically the really like square proportioned windows at the corners that are definitely not vertically proportioned to my eyes. And if that's one of the things that's contributing to, you know, the fit of this particular design, I don't know, it was just a sort of jarring disjuncture between the two to me. I think in general, I think that it's a fine design, and I just wanted to register the sort of disconnect between those two things.
Thank you. Hearing no other comments.
Oh, hey, Mike, I was sorry.
Okay.
I have something. First of all, I think, Michael, that's a good observation on the corner windows. You see below it, there is a more vertically oriented window, which is a little more graceful toward that corner. So I'd say that's something to consider in this design. I think all in all, I think it's really well thought out and proportioned, and it's a good fit. The challenge comes when you're backing this RMF 35 up to the SR1. And as it sits on the ground, that 45-foot separation to the house in the SR1 is significant. It will help alleviate the concern, but still, when you've got a higher density zoning district backing to a residential, I think you have to be a little careful with proximities. That's the only part of this project that I have a concern about, and I wonder if there might be some way to give a little bit more breathing room to the SR1 without requiring them to go all the way to the 25-foot. You know, it's 9 to 10 feet. You know, I wonder if we should ask for another 5 feet or something to throw out a number. So that's, other than that, I think it's a good project, good design, and will be appropriate there.
Thank you, Kenton. Going back to the windows, in the image that was shown right before this one here, where it was showing the existing and the new, yes, thank you. I look at the squareness of the windows to the image to the right and compare it to what is proposed. I see that the elevations are very well broken up. I'm pleased that these are brick structures. I think that very well matches the vocabulary of the neighborhood. The horizontal banding and the heights seem to be in order. I too struggle just a bit, Kenton, with the proximity, but that's what we have been shown. Fits within the parameters. Fits within the zoning, other than the small variance concerning the setbacks. So they feel like they've followed the rules and have met those. So it's I think, quite frankly, this is a product of as was mentioned, this is a need for this middle housing, and this is a particular typical Utah big site in the middle of the blocks that this is filling that need.
Mike, this is Rob Hyde. I agree with what you and what Ken and others have said. I support what the staff is recommending here.
Very well. Should we, at this point, unless there's any other discussion from commissioners, should we end the discussion and call for a motion at this point?
Yep. Let's do it.
Mr. Chair, can you verify that Carlton is still on the line?
Very well.
Carlton?
Carlton Getz, are you on the line?
Hasn't come back yet.
Sorry to interject, but just wanted to
No.
interject before the motion, just.
Well, no, I had thought that we had reached a quorum. Carlton, if you are back, can you unmute, please?
There's a little box up there, but
Carlton, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm showing that Carlton's. Oh no, it's shown as muted again.
We'll give him a ring.
Yes, he may be having some technical difficulties.
Carlton.
Yeah, I am here.
There we go.
My apologies. Had some power issues with the laptop.
All right, very well. So Carlton, since you are back and you did have some issues, did you have any other discussion items concerning this?
No, I did not.
Okay. So Robert, I think you were just about ready to present a motion.
I'm happy to do that. I just need to get the right place in the Dropbox here and get the motion sheet. Yes. Based on the discussion, analysis, and findings of the staff report and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the proposed new constructions as presented in petition PLN HLC 2020-00803.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Very well. Since we've had a motion and a second, I believe it's time to vote unless there is further discussion. So I'm going to go in order on the order that I have, Robert.
Aye.
Kenton,
Aye.
Carlton,
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Very good. That's and I would vote aye as well. So that's unanimous. Very well. Thank you. Thank you, commissioners, staff, and the public. Now let's move to the second item on the docket this evening. Katya, I think you have a presentation.
All right. Let me share my presentation here. Okay. So this is a project at 222 29, Almond Street. And it is a contributing structure within the Capitol Hill Historic District. And in 2020, mostly 2020, there was major renovation on this property. It's under enforcement now because most of the work that was done without a certificate of appropriateness and a building permit. So now we're presenting 14 separate different requests from the property owner, the applicant, and some of those changes. Some of the changes were done appropriately, and they're not going to need any further change to it. But a lot of the changes were done that would not receive a certificate of appropriateness. So we're asking the applicant the applicant is asking the commission to approve changes to what they originally have. So I'm going to go through, some of the changes. First of all, the roof was replaced with asphalt shingles, and so the applicant is asking for the roof replacement to be approved. As far as the windows, except for the windows in the basement that had been already been replaced. All the other windows were replaced as final windows. So, and the proposal is to replace 9 final windows with wood windows and approve the 5 windows in the rear of the property where it's not visible, to approve those 5 windows as final, and replace the wood window trim on the front of the front facade of the home with the historic trimming. So restore this trimming that existed. And with the doors, as you can see, there's 2 doors. This is the front entrance to the home, and the window, the door was not original to this property. This is the window that was replaced with, and this is I keep saying window, but the door that was replaced, and this is a door that was replaced in the basement. The request is to approve the door that was replaced in the front door. It looks it corresponds to the architectural style and the period of significance of this home. And as far as the basement window, it's not visible from the street, so staff is recommending that it is approved as is. Next issue is siding. The siding was covered, the original siding was covered with this pink asbestos shingles. One of the things that the owners did that was correct and was well done was that they removed the asbestos shingle and were able to expose the original siding of the home. So they're requesting approval for that, and in the rear of the of this home, there's an addition where the very rear they installed vinyl siding, and vinyl siding is not a material we approve. So the proposal is to remove the vinyl and replace it with cement fiber, which is the material that is on both sides of this addition here right now. Another change that happened was that the soffit and the fascia was replaced with vinyl. And this detail here, which is a distinctive feature of the craftsmanship of this home, was removed, as you can see. The barge board, and the proposal is to replace the aluminum soffit and fascia with wood and restore this detail of the barge board. Next issue is the chimneys. As you can see, originally there were 2 chimneys. Those 2 chimneys were removed. Staff finds that these, although being a significant feature of this historic property, in this case, the chimneys were removed, and whatever is reinstalled would be, replicas, not the original. So staff recommends that we approve, the commission approves the removal of the 2 chimneys. The next item is the deck on the front porch, and as you can see, the deck was in very bad shape here, the original deck, and this is the replaced deck, and the proposal is to approve what was replaced. Next, and a very important part of this project is that as part of the renovation, the applicant and the property owner built a dormer, and the purpose of the dormer was to be able to have a staircase and have space for the staircase. That's an internal staircase. But the size and the architectural style of this dormer did not fit with the architecture of this property. So the applicant is proposing to remove the dormer entirely, restore it to the same roof shape that it used to be. And what they're going to be doing is to change the direction in how this attic is accessed in the staircase, so that there the space that was needed for the dormer is going to be used internally and not through the dormer. So those are the main, well, all of the proposals and requests. And staff finds that based on the opinions that were we received one comment, but based on the proposal, that it meets all the standards.
Very well. Thank you, Katya.
Mhm.
Commissioners, questions for Natia concerning this? Hearing none, it feels like to me, Katya, that the house is being restored, minus the chimneys. The house is being restored to its previous state, or to a state where it is acceptable to staff. Is that my understanding of that correctly?
It is. Staff finds that all the changes that were done that were inappropriately done are being restored in a way that complies with our standards and our guidelines.
Commissioners, with your consent, I think we can move to hear from the applicant, if indeed they are present and are wanting to comment.
Yeah. Yep. I'm here. My name is Brock Whitworth. I'm representing the owners. I'm just wanted to chime in, and Katya did a great job explaining what's going into this. So I don't have much to say other than we met last May and learned and learned that we did things incorrectly. So our main objective here is to just do everything we can to restore the home to the architectural style and period of significance with what the home once was. So that's our main goal. And Katya has been so great to work with us. I'm sure I've tested her patience plenty, but she's been awesome. And our goal here was to just restore it using the advice and planning with her. So that's our objective here, hopefully accomplishing that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. Commissioners, any other comments, questions to the applicant?
I don't have any.
Yep. Hearing none, I think we'll open for public comments. And again, remember this meeting is recorded, so please state your name before commenting.
I believe Cindy Cromer would like to speak. Cindy, go ahead.
Hi, I have been observing public hearings for 40 years. Just want to let you know that it's remarkable that we are where we are tonight with the support of staff, given your previous hearing on this matter, which was one of the most bizarre I have ever observed. It ranks up there with a meeting of the city council where only 3 members of the city council supported something and somehow it passed. I cannot reconstruct that procedure, but that's the order of what your prior hearing was in terms of just being out there. I am relieved that we are at this point. I hope you will vote in favor before something changes. And that Katya can move on. She is not due another difficult assignment. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay.
Wayne, are there any other comments, any other public comments?
There are. Next is Kaylin Fernandez. Kaylin, go ahead.
Yes. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. My name is Kylan Fernandez. and I also have a meeting item on today's agenda. Reviewing everything that was just presented about this home, my only comment would be to consider the environmental impact of ripping a large amount of new construction materials that were purchased and produced from a variety of resources in the construction of the new dormer, and whether or not it is so out of proportion with the original dormer and scale and the final product that it would be replaced with to be worthy of, basically landfilling such a significant amount of material that was only recently put on. So my only comment is to potentially ease the burden of the homeowner slightly. If it could be found that the existing dormer and interior materials that have been so recently produced and purchased would not have to be landfilled long before their usable life has expired.
Understood. Thank you.
Let's see. I don't see any more hands. If anybody wants to speak, raise your hand. Don't see any, and we have not received any emails on this.
All right, very well. I think at this point, the applicant, Mr. Woodworth, are there any comments or response to any of the public comments that you've heard?
No, I mean, I've had this conversation with Katya as we did try a couple revisions to do our best to keep the dormer. I think, based on our findings, what we found is to achieve what it was put in for, to utilize more of the attic access. We couldn't find a solution to access that with a dormer that met the appropriateness of other dormers, in the opinion of Katya. So we would be open to still using that, but at the same time, similar to what Cindy said, if it means closing this out and having everyone move on and giving Katya a break from us, which we understand she's worked so hard for, then so be it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. I think now it's time to close the public hearings for this particular case and move into and open the executive session for the commission. Commissioners, any comments concerning this? And I'll pick on you. Is there any comments that you have? I'm not certain that there are any comments because we're going back to where the house was, minus the chimneys.
I think this is a good solution. I'd like to commend the applicant for working with planning staff, with Katya, and working through these things. It's a drag to have to go back and redo this, I understand, but it's for the best in the long run. So thank you.
Very good. Commissioners, any other comments?
I don't have any.
I had a clarifying question, actually. Being relatively new to the commission, I wasn't here for the May meeting that was apparently so bizarre. But the rear facade west elevation, there are several windows on it that I gather we're approving tonight. And I wasn't clear whether that was the 4 windows in the sort of shed roofed portion, or whether that's 5 windows, including the portion or the window in the attic.
Understood. Yeah, Katya, can you share again and please get to that back elevation, please? Sure. And as she's doing that, Michael, I believe what the answer is that under our purview, what can be seen from the street is a particular importance, and the back is not. And so I believe that is, yeah, there you go. Nope, one more. 2 more.
So these are 4 windows, and then there is a 5th window that is that's not in this picture. But being that it is on the rear facade and not visible from the street, we have a lot more flexibility on that rear facade, and that's the reason for the recommendation to approve the 5 windows.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify because there was discussion of the siding being replaced on that side, whereas the windows are being approved. Is that correct? That both of those things are happening?
Exactly. Vinyl, the facade, I mean the siding, we typically, and it's actually stated on our standards, not standards, or guidelines, that we're not going to be approving vinyl siding. But as far as vinyl windows, there is more flexibility, and vinyl windows sometimes are approved on the rear of a home.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
I'm going to call for ending this discussion. I don't believe there's further discussion, but I will ask and call for a motion, please.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Thank you, Kenton.
Based on the analysis and findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the commission approve petition PLN HLC 2021-01144, a request for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations at 229 North Almond Street, and approve the following changes numbered 1 through 14, as shown in the motion.
Very well. Thank you, Kenton. May I have a second, please?
I'll second the motion.
Very good. There's been a motion and a second. Let's vote, please. I'm going in order. Robert?
Aye.
Kenton?
Aye.
Carlton? Carlton, you're on mute again. Can you give me a thumbs up?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And Michael?
Aye.
And I too would vote in the affirmative. It's unanimous. It has passed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the commissioners, to the staff, and to the public. Thank you very much. Now it's time to move to item number 3. And I believe that is, bear with me just a second. We've got a report from Aaron Barlow.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Vella. Good evening, commissioners. This is a request for a rear addition at 563 East, 800 South. The applicant is Ted Canald. He's representing the applicant who actually spoke on the previous item, Kylan Fernandez. Let's see. The subject property is located within the Central City Historic District and has been listed as a contributing structure since the last reconnaissance level survey in 2013. Here, I'll show a few slides of the proposed elevations so you can get an idea of what this is going to look like. The addition would sit on top of and behind the existing structure. On here, I did my best to illustrate where the existing envelope is compared to the addition, and would be compared, so it's not exact, but it's just to give you a general idea. Here's some remaining elevations looking to the west, or on the west side, and the north and south elevations, the front and back. As you can see, the addition is a little over 7 feet taller than the existing house. And that chimney would also need to have additional height to meet building code. So that would be raised as well. Here's a site plan. Just to get an idea, there's the existing house is here in the front, and the addition would be sitting in the rear. And the top of the addition actually projects further into the house above this kitchen and existing bedroom. Let's see. I asked the applicant to provide some drawings of what they expect the addition to look like from the street. While the impact is less than what would we see on the elevation drawing, however, the addition is still visible from the street, and because 800 South is so wide, you will still be able to see that addition and that changed roof line from the opposite side of the street. Here's some few photos of the subject property. If there's any signs of construction, this from a previous application, they had a re-roof based on some damage from the previous windstorm. And they needed an update, so there was a update to the roof between this application and your meeting now. Here's a shot of the house from across the street, and right here I tried to illustrate what that new roof form would look like from this point, see how that would change, to give you just a visual idea of what it might look like. It's clear the addition would change the relationship and how the property is interpreted from the street. So as I talked about earlier, staff's recommending denial, and these are kind of the three basic reasons why for our denial recommendation. First, the established roof height and form would change. Second, that rear facade would be irreparably removed. And while we don't always focus on rear facades, that is from standard 9. If the addition were to be removed from this project, the general form of the building would be lost. And then finally, the chimney, the character of the chimney is out of place to that roof form as well, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this point. That's the end of my presentation.
Commissioners? Well, I will say something. Aaron, I appreciate the thoroughness of the report and the diagrams that you just showed, and the really the before and after. Commissioners, if there's no other questions or comments to Aaron, may move on.
I have the applicants is Kylan, and I believe the that Ted Knolds, he's also a call-in user here. So Ted, I'm gonna unmute you. Can you speak?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got a little bit of an
Yes.
echo, but we'll do.
That's because I have my lights. I also had it on my phone because I wasn't sure if my headset was working.
Do you still need to use the phone?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yes.
mute. Can you speak to us now?
Yes. If you can hear me right now, then
Perfect.
then I can use my headset.
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay. I've never done this, so I'll try to do the best I can about sharing my presentation here.
Here, I'm dragging it to you.
I have it open now.
Yeah,
It
give me
just,
just a
just
minute.
oh,
I
here we
just
go. Share.
gave you the privilege of being the presenter there. So
Okay, there we go. So I'd like to thank, first of all, everybody for sitting in on this and for Aaron's thoughts on this. He and I have had several discussions on this project. So as we go through it, here it's just asking, we are asking for this alteration exception with what we are feeling keeping with the guidelines set forth in the code provisions and landmark provisions. That goes forth with the materials and the projects to be approved if possible. Just a little bit on the project here, description of what we're doing. We are asking for a 15-foot rear addition. It's 15 foot, but as Aaron showed earlier, we're taking off what was an afterthought enclosed addition on to what was a porch on the back, which was pretty common in the downtown area, as you all well know. And so the actual addition goes about 7 feet past that as the addition goes. And as we're talking about the rear of the structure on the back, it cannot be seen from any other buildings anywhere around that. I can show that in a minute on a Google map, but it's only visible from his own backyard, the way the backyard is set up. It's true, we're asking for 7'3" additional height to give more space into the home. And as far as the height goes in that area for the code, it is below what is maximum height in that area, even though it is not in keeping with what is right now the height of the home. Of course, we would be using the same wood windows and asphalt shingles and brick where applicable. And also, as it's shown on the detail, we would try to keep as the front of the building the same gingerboard type siding that is with the rest of the thing. So we're trying to keep this still in keeping with all the requirements needed to make it look like that it belongs and matches in the neighborhood. Without going through and boring you with a lot, I did in my presentation, I have going through and went through each and every one of these and showed where the particular renovation details. Let me see if I can get this so I can read it a little bit better. Here we go. So the goal of this presentation is in the context of what is in the buildings around in the area, and I will show them here in a moment in some pictures of buildings in the area within one block. And so it says historically most houses appear to have a height of 1.5 or 2 stories, and a new facade should appear similar in height to those seen historically in the block. And in my pictures that I will show you later, it will look very closely to the ones that are within a block of this home. Taller portions should be set back farther on the lot, which of course we are doing. We're not coming forward further. We're using the last 15 feet of the 10 feet of the back of the home, plus then adding on to the back of it. So on one, the proposed property change will have minimal front appearance impact. As he showed, as you stand on the street and look up, you're seeing, if you look at the site plan or the elevation plan, it looks very high impact looking onto it. Oh, that's 7 feet above. It really looks. But as you're looking to it from the street and looking up at it, the impact isn't near as the impact of it isn't quite as significant as it shows if you're looking directly on it on that kind of a plan view. And it says the historic character of the property shall be retained and preserved. At any time, if the back part was removed, for any reason, it could be brought back to the actual original state that it was. That back area there does have a sort of a dormer kind of thing coming off of it, and then the shed roof looking thing that came down off the porch. The changes will not affect any historical materials on the building, and only a portion of the back part of the roofing structure will be removed. Oops. A permit was given recently to re-roof the home, which Aaron kindly brought up. The same materials are going to be used on the home. On this one, we'll maintain the characteristics of like buildings in the district, and also have been having a hard time with it, that also have been modified over the course of time here. No sense of false historic or architecture that we're trying to do in here. Otherwise, we're not trying to build a square building in a building that typically has the Victorian style homes. Alterations or additions, no modifications to such items on the front of the sides of the homes. Distinctive fixtures, all distinctive features are to remain as they are or replicated as they are in the front going towards the back, including any freeze boards, et cetera, et cetera. And we've agreed to anything in item 6 Same with item 7. We agree to all those items. Coming down here to item 8, the contemporary. Please see example of such changes in pictures, which I'll bring you down to the pictures in a minute. We're also doing a minor change that we believe conforms and is in keeping with the above, trying to keep the significant culture of the neighborhood. Additions or alterations, this is considered in the design, number 9. And please stop me if I'm going through these. I'm sure you guys have read through this enough that you are very familiar with all these guidelines. Number 10, no materials are going to be used. And also in chapter 21A46, it's applicable to this chapter, which I also went through here, and just it meets all the requirements below, which is it is within the patterning of the surrounding neighborhood, which was what we feel is the most important item on this edition. And it goes through, of course, once again, each of these patterns in that, what it needs to do, and the landscape lighting, grading of the land, we're not changing any of that. Roof forms, building character, the openings, how everything works on it from as far as from a street and a facade view from the front. And of course, here are some of the same pictures we looked at. If you look at this first picture here, looking straight on it, yes, this looks significant. It looks like, wow, this is really a significant change as we're looking at it from the front of the street. And of course, on the lot, with the lot itself, it is, even though it's showing the full addition here, we're only coming back from this point to this point. So going back onto the lot is fairly.
Place?
Yes.
No.
I'm sorry, what was that? That you, Aaron?
No, go ahead. I think somebody was just unmuted. They didn't know.
Oh, okay. So if I come forward here, this is the properties that I've gone around in the area. These are all within a block of the applicant at this time, and I'll show you some of these properties. This, of course, is the property as you see it from across the street. Here's the property directly east of it, where you can see the height and then the additions that have been done to this property. Once again, this is the second picture, 651 and 653 South 6th East. That is the one directly east, which the side yard, of course, faces 8 South there. Here's another of the same pictures as you're looking at it. Whoops. Then here we have 651 South, where it's showing the second story with a flat facade on it. It says just down the street. The next one is this one. This is actually on Green Street. And of course, this is an addition on the back where you can see somebody has done something, gone up in the back. If you look at this one, this is one that's on Green Street that's been approved. That I actually am doing a project right down the street from this one. And I mean, this is, of course, not at all in keeping with the neighborhood, even though it was approved. It's probably for the same reason that the one in the Marmalade district was approved. And I'm in agreement with letting these kind of approvals go through so that we do have the housing or the room that is needed for people in single family dwellings in this area, which is what we're asking for. Here's another one with an addition up above it. This one here was another one with an addition above it. Here are the building permits for this such spoken ones. Here's another one on Park Street. This is just right almost directly across the street. This is another one. I didn't get the address of that one. I apologize. Another one. Now this is the one I'd like to bring the most attention to most likely. This is the one that's probably most similar to the proposed addition. It has gone up the same amount in the very rear of the home. They attached to the home back here. You can see this. I did it from the street view of what you can see how they did this and how they made it so that it did look proportional to the rest of the home. And of course, it looks like that they've done a very good job restoring the rest of the home on this one also. It looks like they built a new garage back there also, which is in keeping with what was going on here. And here is, of course, a little bit more of a side view of that same type of an arrangement on that home. And this is probably the most similar one in the area. This is about a half a block south of Kai's current residence. And then here are some more where they've put a shed roof on this one and kept the gingerboard design. Here's another shed roof with a gingerboard design. And then here is, of course, from the street view of when they had started roofing, doing the re-roof. This is my proposed, which I believe Aaron showed you, of the impact of how high the roof would come up from the impact of, as you're looking at it from the street view. And then here's two more items at the street view. And then this further across the street from a street view. So with that being said, I understand that, and Aaron and I have discussed this at length, and when we spoke about this, Aaron says, you know, according to the guideline, I have to go with the guidelines that we're giving you, and that's the reason I have to, you know, deny this, and you're welcome to go before the board. He said, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to side with what we're thinking. If you can come up with the argument that we don't think the impact is going to be that great, and it is actually going to enhance the area, and there's enough homes in the area that have the same type of impact that we're begging that the board look towards our favor, and we can get this taken care of.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions to the applicant?
Yeah, Mike.
Trying to get back.
Mr. Connell, do you have all those other examples that you showed in photographs? Do you have any idea how old they were when those were built?
The permits varied. Some of the permits went before the central city was made a historic district. The one that I showed you that was most like Mr. Fernandez's was, I believe, in 2012 or 13. So when I researched the permits, they ranged all the way from the mid 90s till the present day, depending upon which one it was.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I make a statement?
Certainly.
We're supposed to be looking at this project with regard to the standards and the design guidelines. If there were inappropriate additions that don't meet the standards and the guidelines within the neighborhood, that wouldn't help this project meet the standards or meet the standards. Regardless of the statement that the applicant made, or if that was erroneous advice that was provided to the applicant by city staff. And I'll follow up on that one.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you, Michaela. I was going to get to that when we get to executive meeting, but I will just say that to the applicant, in looking at the staff report, there are two standards, standard number 2 and standard number 9, I believe it was, that do not comply. And so those are the two standards that do not comply. There are 4 that do comply, and there are 4 that are just not applicable. But standard number 2 and standard number 9, our staff has indicated that it does not comply. So that's what we're looking at this evening.
Another question, please, Mike, for Michaela. When was, refresh my memory, when was that Central City Historic District established?
Gosh, I have to
On the report, 1991.
1991.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments for the applicant? Hearing none, let's open this to public comments. Again, please remember that this is recorded, so please state your name before commenting.
Cindy Cromer, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Cindy Cromer, and I am an abutting property owner on 600 East. There are some details here, but I think the larger issue is what's relevant in terms of the mass of this house. And what's relevant is the streetscape on 800 South, not the block and not the blocks to the south. It's the streetscape on 800 South. This addition shouts that it's not original, and it is unlike the one that the applicant has identified that he says is most likely like his project, because that one sits far further back on the original house. And that, I believe, is the solution here, because this is an extraordinarily deep lot. And there is plenty of room to provide a larger addition on the main level and then set the two-story portion further back on the property. And the lack of orientation to 800 South of the addition as it rises up over the original structure is a problem. I would ask you to table this because I think there is a solution here that will give the applicant more space. This is a gentrifying neighborhood where houses are selling for close to $1 million, believe it or not. And I can understand why someone would want to reinvest in their property. But there is a way, I believe, to increase the amount of square footage in this house without compromising the street presence to the degree that this proposal does. So I would ask you to table and give the applicant a chance to look at other options. Again, this is an extraordinarily long, deep lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Wayne, are there other comments?
I do not see any other comments.
This is Kylan
Oh.
Fernandez. I am the
There
owner
we go.
of the home, and I was hoping to speak after Ted. I'd like to, if I'm able to, just show a few photos and respond to some of the very valid points that were brought up. Is that, can I be given sharing privileges?
Yeah, give me just a minute.
Absolutely. I guess you tell me if this is working, because I now have lost most of your window.
No, we can see this. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Anyway, so I'm the, the owner of this home. I purchased this in 2014. And just to understand a little bit, to ask the commission, of course, you go by the standards, and I understand and respect that completely. But I'd like to look at this in just like a little bit of a larger context. And similarly, as the historical commission and these standards have the intent of a very long-term preservation, to look at this project as a longer term thing. When I bought it in 2014, it was basically unlivable. It was surrounded by a chain link fence and had an almost daily police presence due to gang and drug activity. This was the interior of the house when I purchased it. It had no heat, had one working outlet, one working light bulb. I bought it because I care about the neighborhood. I like to live somewhere that is pedestrian. I'm the first to holler at anyone in the neighborhood parking across the sidewalk. I enjoy living on a street with a bike lane. And I bought it partially because of the potential. As Cynthia aptly pointed out, I do have a very, very deep lot. I had a driveway where I can store the cars off the street and be sensitive to the amount of infill housing that's going on that doesn't always have sufficient parking. And as I went through this house, I've made a tremendous effort to preserve a large number of historical aspects and a large amount of just kind of like the emotional feel of a historical house, both inside, where the commission has probably less interest and no jurisdiction, but I do think it is slightly relevant here. And did things like purchase an entire slab of 3cm granite for the kitchen that went in, and use wooden cabinetry and real tile and interior remodeling. The hardwood floor in the house, unfortunately, had been sanded down to the tongue and groove and had significant damage due to fire. And instead of getting vinyl plank or any of these other materials that the Historical Society would have no purview to approve or deny, because I care, and because this is the home I live in, I'm not doing this addition to flip it, to rent it in a way that I don't also live in it. I do rent to one roommate in the house, but I'm not planning to vacate it. I spent the extra money for premium wood, the narrower diameter, which is also thinner, laid in place hardwood floors. I went to Huter Mill in Ogden and worked with Burton Door and Lumber. Because most of the trim had been removed from the house, it was incredibly sad that I wasn't able to restore the actual material. I went to the detail of bringing a piece of the original trim up to the mill, and we matched that profile with a custom knife. And I've started retrimming the interior of the house with matching trim. These doors, similarly, we came and we measured the one decent shape original door in the house. And I've had all the interior doors that I've done match that same 5-panel raised wood profile, which is not available for sale. These are 100% custom. On the outside, I've worked with kind of this front garden, which is very common and a key aspect of the neighborhood. And I'd like to talk about the back facade. One interesting thing about this house is that it has actually 7 properties that I border, 3 to the east, 3 to the west, and 1 to the north. I took this photo about an hour and a half before the meeting. You can see that there's a porch that at one point was not fully enclosed, and then another room added on to that. The roof pitch is hard to tell in the photo. It does actually change a little bit over the boarded up window. It's vinyl windows in the back, an uneven door, and a rear facing dormer. And I don't really feel like it's very aesthetically pleasing in a general sense. Looking back, you can see some of the other properties in the neighborhood. This is a freestanding concrete block supported shed. I built that during the pandemic. And again, you'll see 2 windows in it that's of a similar 2-3 proportion to the original house windows. I matched the roof pitch to the house and used salvaged cedar siding from a project in Park City to use original wooden exterior materials on a shed in my backyard. As I look around, these are houses that are visible from my backyard. This photo is taken from my backyard. There's a plethora of rear additions on buildings. This is one of the properties that borders mine that use vinyl siding, vinyl windows. And one thing that's almost consistent among all of them is that they're set in just enough that they don't actually have any visibility for the most part from the street. And my understanding is that for the most part, if there is no visual street impact, the commission almost has no jurisdiction to really say anything. But these are the things I could see. It's kind of hard to see through the bushes. This is one house, 2 houses to the north, the one that was just displayed. This house faces 600 East. And similarly, It has a shed type 2-story addition on the back, different roof pitch, different materials, vertical siding that doesn't match the rest of the house, window proportions that don't match the rest of the house, visible from my backyard. My neighbor to the west has a cinder block addition, similarly set back, so it wasn't needing a certificate of appropriateness. Just down the block, as Ted showed a similar photo, we have a large historic house that then turns into a significant shed roof style addition that's visible from the street, from the alley, and from neighbors. Here's an example of a project. Ted showed a photo of this much closer. This is by the community gardens. This is looking across 800 South. And you can see in the roof line that really what's most prominent here are 4 AC units. And I think it's worth noting that although, yes, I'm bringing a roof line up in the neighborhood and I recognize and respect the visual impact of that, one thing I'm not doing is putting a piece of modern equipment is now the thing that is the transition from our beautiful mountains and skyline into man-made materials. I'm trying to match a similar roof pitch and similar materials in the neighborhood. And I find it interesting that things like this can get approved, despite the fact that the HVAC is extremely prominent. And you can actually just see it even while standing on the sidewalk. My addition was kind of inspired by 2 other additions, both of which were done with certificates of appropriateness. This is the corner of, I believe, Green Street and 800 South. And this entire 2-story, basically everything you can see in this photo is new structure. This, from the front, you can see the original house and you can see the new structure behind. And one thing that I think is relevant in this is that although this addition probably almost tripled the size of this building and did definitely change its street view, they've used consistent materials throughout, a consistent roof line throughout, a consistent window diameter throughout, and integrate it with matching siding materials, matching paint, in such a way that it looks, once again, like a cohesive and complete structure, even though the addition is very, very significant. More shed roof style additions have been done off the back. This is visible from the street. This is, again, where you can see, even though this addition is set back 3 feet, it still protrudes up behind that dormer, and you can very clearly see that it just doesn't really match. Finished floors, a slightly more recent photo of the house. To address some of the points specifically, we are extending the chimney, and I would be, Ted definitely is like, hey, knock it down. I think that chimneys are historic. It's an aspect I love about the house. And a big reason to even do this addition is to preserve that chimney and that historical aspect of it. One interior problem of the house is that there's a centrally located functional fireplace that I've restored that prevents me from, say, opening the kitchen up into the living room to make it a more usable space. So part of the addition is actually an attempt to preserve some of this more original layout on the interior, while then building more space to accommodate the way people live 100 years after this house was built. And to do that without just gutting out some of these beautiful original features, such as a centrally located chimney, fireplace, brick. There would be an impact from the street, but going back to that example of the cedar-sided one that Ted, that's very alike. Similarly, this addition is actually set back quite significantly. The house itself has quite a setback. And that roof line, although it is going to start slightly farther forward on the house, is set back quite significantly. Standing on the sidewalk, you would be hard pressed to actually even probably see the addition. And from across the street at that distance, I think it would look very proportional. One of the goals of this addition is, instead of potentially doing something small and then doing another one and another one and another one, and creating this kind of jumbled look to the back of the house, is to actually create one look that is together, cohesive, uses consistent materials and pitches and angles. So although the rear facade is dramatically different, I don't think it's out of line at all with other historic structures, or really, I think, almost getting significantly closer to what the original facade looked like before the porch was enclosed and the small room extended beyond that. So although we're scaling it up in height, in terms of the depth and other aspects, we are potentially actually restoring a historical aspect of the rear of the home. I'm very sensitive to the experience that my neighbors have around it. And one compelling reason for, so Cindy's suggestion is to just push further and further back into the lot. This is certainly not untenable or a terrible idea, but a significant reason not to do that, and kind of the reason I chose not to, is going back to my neighbor to the west. You can see this greenhouse next to me. And I don't know if I have a better photo that really shows that building, but they've had that cinder block addition that goes back on their property. Here we go. Right? So you can see the two lawn chairs there. The proposed addition would have my house end in its final form within basically a foot of where their house does. And I think that that's very important in keeping with the character of the house. As you look across our backyards and you look across many of the alleys, it's a little jarring when one house has had so many additions going back, particularly when, instead of being able to go up 2 stories fully in order to get the same square footage, they keep going further and further back in the lot. And now you have one house that protrudes deeply into the lot that is often visible from neighboring properties, particularly neighbors that are also 2 stories. So part of the reason I'm asking the commission to consider going against the staff decision is to look at, instead of the exact letter of the code, but at the true intent of the code. And my intent here is to not have my building suddenly out of character, and in order to get the square footage I would like, be blowing way past and therefore impacting my neighbors and their enjoyment of their backyards and what they see when they're in their private recreational space more heavily, or having something that seems terribly out of character.
Very good. Mr. Fernandez, thank you very much for your presentation. It obviously shows that you care about the house and have done some wonderful work on its interior. I think unless there's any other public comments, Wayne, I think it's time to close the public hearing portion of this and move to executive session.
No one else wants to speak.
All right, very good. So let's move to executive session, please, for the commission, and let's have some discussion from commissioners. I think there will be quite a bit. Commissioners, are there any comments?
Well, I've got comments, but I was kind of waiting for someone else to go. But have we lost other commissioners? I don't know that we have a quorum anymore.
Wayne, I see that you're Your speaker is muted.
See myself and
Mr. Fernandez, you and I see Wayne, Michaela.
2, 3, 4.
I think we still have a quorum.
Yeah, there's a quorum there.
Yep.
All right, very well.
Okay, good.
We're good.
So, okay. So
Okay.
Kenton, you wanted to comment?
Sure. You know, I appreciate what the applicant is trying to do. I understand how it's good to expand a house like that and to improve it. I am in concurrence though with what's been said by Cindy in the assessment of the staff. I think this could work, but it's too far forward on the building. It's too tall to be too in that position on the building. And that gable roof form is a little harsh. I would think that a little bit of tweaking of the design, slipping it further back, considering what might go on the lower floor, which will allow less on the upper floor, would be worth looking at. Or if that much area needs to go on the upper floor, considering how to soften the roof line as it faces the front facade. I think that despite what the applicant and Mr. Connold have said, I think this is going to have more of an effect, an impression on the street than it really appears, just given the height, the roof shape, and the placement on the house. I don't think it's impossible to solve, and I don't think it requires abandoning the project or anything, but I think it needs a little bit more work to reduce its effect on the street exposure.
Very well. Thank you, Kenton.
Yeah.
Michael, did you have any comments that you'd like to share?
I'm also in agreement with the staff's conclusions here, specifically with regard to standard 9, that it seems to me is really the sort of tipping point on this particular issue. That, you know, this is not distinct enough to be removable in a case where, you know, that might be a desirable outcome. So for me, it's not, I can't wrap my head around a way to make it in compliance with that particular standard. So I'm with the staff report on this one, I think.
Very well. Thank you, Michael. Robert, did you have any comments to this proposal?
I'm in agreement with what's been said. Just too much for me. I don't think it. I think the staff has it right, and I support what Carlton and Kenton have said.
Very well. I would say that I acknowledge that you're never going to see the addition from the front in true elevation, but I do think that you will see enough of it. And I think from the sides, you will indeed see this. So I'm in agreement as well that the standard number 9 simply does not comply, and it feels like that it dominates the house. I do believe with Kenton that I do think that there is a solution that is very possible, taking into account that what the applicant has indicated, that, you know, moving the back of the house slightly further back, whether or not it has an impact on the neighbors could be argued, but I do think that the pushing that further back would help the addition not feel like it's dominating the original construction. Is there any other discussion by the commissioners?
I would venture to make one more comment, more broadly speaking. In many of the presentations that we do see, we tend to see a comparison of other houses in certain neighborhoods that have done similar things as a rationale for why what is being proposed is not necessarily out of place. But it strikes me that for many applicants, it almost serves the counterproductive purpose of emphasizing how much historical nature has previously been lost in prior years, and why the standards are in place, and why it is important to maintain what is still left as best we can.
Thank you very much, Carlton. I agree with that. We can't change what's been done before we had purview of all of the other facilities and houses and things that have been made. We can only respond and we only can react to what's in front of us. And I too believe that what staff has indicated in their review of the standards, there are two in particular that are pretty strident, indicating that they simply do not comply. And so I do believe in my heart that there's an out. I think there's a way to add the square footage and comply with the standards. I just don't believe that what's been proposed to us is there just yet.
So with respect to that, Mike, or perhaps Michaela, if we want to give the applicant a chance to make revisions if they wish, are we better to table this or to deny it? What's the best way to proceed so it has the least red tape for the applicant?
Honestly, it's a free application. Either way, you can go ahead and table it. And Aaron can work with the applicant, taking in all of your comments tonight to work on something that works for the applicant, but also better meets the standards.
Yeah.
So that's fine. If you would table it to potentially not the next meeting, but just to a future meeting, I think that would be best to give the applicant time to work with staff and come up with a new idea, new renderings.
Okay. I don't know what the other commissioners think about that. It was just following up on an earlier thought.
Well, I can volunteer, Kenton, that I do think there's a solution here. And I do think, quite frankly, with a bit of tweaking, that the addition that's wanted and needed, and very much understand Mr. Fernandez's put his heart and soul and love into this house. I do think there's a solution that can meet the standards and the needs of the addition to the house. And I think there's just a tiny bit more massaging to get to that point. And Michaela, if indeed tabling it is a good way to go, then I would propose that perhaps that may be an avenue for the commission.
Great.
I would see a majority for tabling this, so I would move that we table this until a future meeting.
Very well.
I'll second
Her
that
as well.
So then I'm a little bit at a loss to, Michaela, are we then voting on whether to table this or not?
Someone can make a motion to
Very
table
well.
the item.
All right, commissioners, can I have a motion concerning this regarding tabling this?
Yes, I move to table this matter into a future meeting of the commission.
Thank you, Carlton. Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
Very well, and so let's go in order once again. Robert?
I'm in favor.
Kenton?
Favor.
And Carlton?
Aye.
And Michael?
Aye.
Very well. We have, and myself, I would vote to do that as well. So it's unanimous to table this to a future meeting so that staff can work with the applicant to meet the two standards that are currently not in compliance. Thank you. Let's go in order here. Thank you to the commissioners, to the staff, and to the public. Now I believe it is time. The fourth item on here was now a work session.
Laura, will you be presenting? Do you want me to make you a presenter, or will somebody else be doing it?
So the consultant has a presentation. I was just going to kind of introduce it. So
There you
I
go.
don't need any special controls.
All right. Thank you, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Bandara. I'm the urban designer in the planning division. And this, you've heard, for those of you who were on the commission in August, a little bit about the Pioneer Park Cultural Landscape Report already. And it's now complete. And so we, the consultant historic landscape architect is back to present findings. So I just want to kind of preface it with a few things. Cultural landscape reports are new to Salt Lake City, but they're documents that provide Secretary of Interior standards for documentation and guidance on landscapes with cultural and historic significance. And the Public Lands Department has is now using cultural landscape reports to document our landmark sites and to provide information and guidance on these landscapes to both decision makers and land managers. So the goal of CLRs and using them in Salt Lake City is really for us to obtain a better understanding of the multiple layers of physical history that exist in our parks and public spaces, and to provide documented evidence of their historic significance and integrity. So the cultural landscape reports have a treatment section, which you can consider somewhat analogous to design guidelines. And you probably would use them in a way that's similar to how you use design guidelines now to evaluate proposals that are in front of you. What's different about treatment guidelines in cultural landscape reports is that they reflect the fact that landscapes are constantly growing and changing. And so paired with the significance and integrity evaluations, the treatment recommendations are intended to provide site-specific guidance on how to manage change in our significant public landscapes. So with that, I'm going to pass the time over to our consultant, Chalet Larson, and just say quickly that, you know, again, this is the first one of these that we've done, and so it will be really helpful for us when proposals come in front of you for Pioneer Park, to let us know how it worked for you, what's working, in terms of being able to, you know, evaluate these proposals, and if you feel like it's giving you all the guidance that you need to make a decision based on kind of the purview of the HLC. So thanks for your time, and if Chalet is here, I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Laura. I am here. I just had to unmute myself. Let me just share my screen here. So I'm Chalet Larson. I'm a historical landscape architect and principal of IO Land Arc, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present the Pioneer Park Cultural Landscape Report to you this evening. As Laura said, this has really been a flagship effort as the first CLR to be completed for Salt Lake City. And this whole process has been over a year in the making. So we're just really excited to be here at the finish line. Finally, I just wanted to also take a moment to recognize my team for this project, including Kirk Huffaker, who's here tonight with us at the meeting, as well as Rhonda Lawrenson with Evalog Life. And a huge thank you to Nancy and Laura and the rest of the Salt Lake City team, who were just really engaged and passionate about moving this project forward and providing valuable feedback throughout the process. So thank you. So the last time we presented to you, we basically gave an overview talking about the structure and function of cultural landscape reports and talking a little bit about how CLRs use landscape characteristics to really break down and understand and be able to define historic landscapes. And then we gave an overview of our research to date, which included the historical periods for the park that we had identified. So tonight we're going to move into the next half of the report, discussing our analysis of the park, including its historical significance and the remaining integrity of the park, as well as to provide a brief overview of the treatment recommendations. And I recognize that it's the end of the day and we're all tired, especially you all. So I might skim through some of it, but if we get to the end and you feel like I move through anything too quickly, feel free to ask questions. So, so our original site history included 6 historical periods for the park, including the Indigenous period, the Old Fort period, the Territorial period, the Americanization period, the Civic period, and all the way up through present day with the city stewardship period. And in terms of evaluating the significance, I apologize, I have kids ready for bed in the background. So I can't minimize, sorry, I'm just trying to minimize. Does anyone know how to make my window go away so I can see my slides? Okay. So, sorry. So we've identified 4 periods of the total 6 periods, historical periods that we believe are significant. And this includes the Indigenous period, significant under criterion D, the Old Fort period, significant under criteria A and B, the Americanization period, significant under criteria A and C, and the Civic period, significant under criteria A. And in the interest of time, I won't go into a lot of detail on this, but again, when we get to the Q&A, if you have any questions or want me to talk through this a little bit more, I would be happy to. On the left, you'll see the period plans for each period or each of those 4 periods that I just identified. And okay. So the analysis chapter of the report includes a series of comparative photos that were used as part of our assessment, and these really highlight the landscape conditions today as compared to historical conditions. And the goals of this analysis process were to identify the landscape resources that contribute to the historical significance and character of the Pioneer Park study area, assess the integrity of remaining landscape resources, and provide a basis for treatment and management recommendations for the preservation of significant resources. And based on our analysis, we believe that the park retains integrity for the following. So location retains integrity from all periods because it remains in the same location. Design retains integrity from the Americanization period based on the continuity of vegetation, spatial organization, the strong core perimeter, separation by mown lawn and perimeter trees, and circulation patterns from that period to present day. We also believe that it retains integrity for the setting, particularly from the Americanization period, the mixture of housing and commercial buildings, predominantly pedestrian and street-oriented nature of the city during the Americanization period is similar to that of the present day city. And we do not believe that it, in terms of materials, it does retain integrity from the Americanization and Civic periods. Particularly in terms of the vegetation. We do not feel that it retains integrity of workmanship, mainly due to the loss of the built features that were part of the park during these historical periods. And we do believe that it retains the integrity of feeling from the Americanization and civic periods through the aesthetic expression of the park, in particular the lawn, the tree canopy, and just that feeling of, you know, shade and respite from the urban environment. And in terms of its association, it retains integrity for its association with the Old Fort period. So the next chapter of the report is the treatment plan for Pioneer Park, which I'll be summarizing in the next couple of slides. The treatment plan outlines the overall historic preservation approach to Pioneer Park and is based on the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. The proposed treatment is rooted in both the historical significance of the park along with its integrity. The treatment also factors in the proposed use of the park going forward. And the following were some of the goals that we worked with the city to establish for the treatment plan, including preserving the resources that contribute to the significance of Pioneer Park, as defined in the report, continue ongoing use of the park primarily as a green space, limiting the number of structures and the amount of hardscape, and to communicate the significance of individual resources and establish guidelines for the design team who's working on developing a new plan for Pioneer Park, as well as to convey information in terms of ongoing maintenance of these resources by the parks and maintenance staff. So the overarching treatment recommendation for Pioneer Park is rehabilitation. And we believe that this treatment will allow for preservation of contributing historic resources, as well as the alteration of non-contributing landscape characteristics to accommodate changes to the park. In addition to the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, the subsequent recommendations are also based on the following evaluation process set forth by the National Park Service in a guide to cultural landscapes, which includes the steps listed here. And again, in the interest of time, I won't read through all of these. So sorry, I don't know if you can all hear that in the back. My 3-year-old melting down in the background. So the treatment chapter includes a narrative design guideline specifically addressing topography, circulation, land use, vegetation, compatible alterations and additions, as well as the mitigation of 300 west and 400 south. So just to highlight some of those recommendations here. So for topography, the generally flat topography of this site should be maintained. This includes preserving existing sightlines across the park and limiting green infrastructure limit green infrastructure or low impact development strategies to topographic changes that are shallow and wide. So it is possible to have some topographic interventions that allow for green infrastructure in a sensitive way. In terms of circulation, we're recommending to maintain the sidewalk circulation patterns around the perimeter of the block. And this includes retaining adequate soil volumes for large tree plantings between the sidewalk and the curb. So really maintaining the integrity of that street tree planting that really defines the perimeter edge of the block. And maintaining the corner and mid-block accesses to the park and extending inward from those points. And then vegetation obviously is a really important landscape characteristic for this particular site. So our recommendations include minimizing the use of inorganic and impermeable surfaces, maintaining the use of mown lawn as the predominant ground cover for the site, protect and manage mature trees, allow for rest periods for lawn and root zones between events, create and update a succession tree planting plan to ensure tree coverage over time. This is kind of what Laura mentioned. Landscapes are temporal in nature and things grow and evolve over time. So the main priority here would be to continue the use of a variety of shade tree plantings consistent with both the Americanization and civic periods. And then to try to maintain the existing American elms on the west perimeter for as long as possible. And when eventually those do pass on, to replace them with Dutch elm disease resistant varieties of American elm. In terms of compatible alterations and additions, proposed alterations and additions to the park should preserve the identified contributing cultural landscape features, and new construction should be done in a way that does not impair the remaining contributing landscape features. Structures should be compatible in scale and massing with the historic architectural style, but should not create a false sense of history. Structures should be as small as possible with low visual impact. And in terms of new improvement to the park or new construction that might happen, consider developing an archaeological discovery plan. All ground disturbances deeper than the base of sod should include an archaeological review. And then to develop a consistent style for new small scale features to minimize the visual clutter and impact that those have in the landscape. And that includes things like light posts and benches and furnishings, as well as signage.
Hello.
Hello?
Well, I got your 2 messages. I'm in a
Thank you. And then finally, we just wanted to address the mitigation of 300 West and 400 South. Obviously, these are very large, noisy streets, which does have, we feel like, a negative impact in terms of the enjoyment of the park and some of the historical resources within the park. So our recommendations here are to maintain and enhance the perimeter by preserving existing sidewalks, park strips, and street trees to help mitigate the noise, as well as consider adding an additional layer of street trees and vegetation along 200, or sorry, that should say 300 West and 400 South. So 200 West is fine. Anyway, so yeah, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to work on this project. And are there any questions?
Yeah, I had a single question, Ms. Larson, about, trees don't last forever. And I've been driving around the site on Google here just now. What kind of plan is in place for the trees that have, particularly from, it looks like the tallest trees are at third West. Is there a plan to have a second row or intermediate row that will start growing as the older trees then begin to die out? How are we approaching that?
So that was not specifically addressed in the report. I think that would be covered by the recommendation that the city develop a tree succession planting plan.
Okay.
But that's definitely something that would need to be addressed or considered in that process.
But you are proposing along the eastern edge of the site to add more vegetation to mitigate the noise from what, 3rd West and 4th South. Is that correct?
So we're not, so our recommendations are meant to be more general. So we're not specifically proposing anything. We're just suggesting that that might be a good strategy for a historically appropriate strategy for mitigating the noise and sound from 300 West and 400 South.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of comments. As the, I guess, resident historian on the commission, I just wanted to compliment the historiography here. I think it's really impeccably researched and well done. I particularly appreciated the consistent, let's say, reiteration of the pattern of temporary use on this site over time. because that is, you know, a subject of much debate and discussion still now. So I appreciated, you know, seeing that pattern recur. The other thing is that the drawings are incredibly helpful. The drawing to go with each particular period of significance was just, yeah, really, really helpful. One question I had, which is kind of a historical question, I guess, is that there was this remark on, I guess it's like page 60-ish, about the widening of the streets to go with the construction of the interstate. That you were kind of unable to determine whether the shape and size of the park actually changed at that moment, it seemed like. Is that true, or am I reading that incorrectly? Sorry, I'm asking you like
yeah.
about one particular page here, but
No, clearly that street widening did impact the park, and I mean, when you look at the park today, you can see that park strip is noticeably smaller than, you know, your average typical park strip, but we don't have exact information on that.
Okay.
Other than and you can see it on the photos as well. I don't think we included a specific comparative photo in the report for that, but we do have photos that show you can see the park before and after that road widening happened.
Yeah.
And you can see that I would say it encroached on the park less so than it encroached on the park strip on that edge of the park, but it's not clear if or how much that shifted the sidewalk.
Okay. I was just wondering. It was just a question that emerged in reading it. So thank you.
Kirk, did you have anything to add to that? I guess not.
Well, I too would like to say thank you very much. It's a very detailed, well prepared report. It's to me it's very interesting to go through those 4 basic periods and see how the park has changed and morphed and served the city in different ways over the course of time. Well, thank you very much. I believe we have addressed the 4 issues that were before us this evening, commissioners. And unless there is anything to the contrary, I think it's time to close this meeting. Thank the commissioners, the staff, all the presenters, and the public that has participated this evening. Thank you very much. I close this meeting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.